I want to show you how to get your site connected up to Tugboat so that you can build out fully working versions of your website for each branch or pull request of your code. It's great to be able to share your work with stakeholders who often don't have local environments to follow along, and for developers to share their work with the rest of their team just by giving them a URL to see the work as it's ready to review. So Tugboat can handle the process of building out your site for you, so you can keep building and working on new features and bug fixes and things like that. So let's get started. To follow along, you need a Git repository, an empty Git repo. I created one here over at GitHub, but you can use whatever version control provider that you want, including your own if you have a self-hosted Git instance. As long as it's publicly accessible for Tugboat, you can use that. Once you have your Git repo, you need to go over to Tugboat and create an account. You can do that through the sign in button. Tugboat accounts are free, and we have a plan that can work for small sites. So go ahead and authenticate in Tugboat using whichever version control provider that you used for creating your empty repo. We use GitHub, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. What you'll see is you will see this create a Tugboat project page if it's your first time. Go ahead and give your project a name. Oftentimes it's the name of you can use the name of the Git repository, and then select the repo that you want to add to Tugboat and click create project. I've already done that. So I've got my Gatsby project here. We're going to build a Gatsby site. All I need to do is link up the repository to it. So I'm going to do that real quick. And you can add multiple repos if you have a project that's a little bit more complex, that's fine. But what it will do is it'll pull in all the branches and pull requests for you. We're going to go ahead and build off of this demo branch. So let's just go ahead and hit build a preview, and as we could expect, it doesn't build anything because Tugboat doesn't know anything about the project, but it'll allow us to drill into this screen and see what's going on. So this is a preview landing page, and we can see here that Tugboat's saying, hey, I can't find a config file, and because I can't find a config file, then I can't find any of the services that I need to spin up. So let's create a config file. So over here in our repository, we are going to create a new file. The Tugboat config file lives in a folder called .tugboat. Hit a slash here, and then within the Tugboat folder we're going to create a config.yaml. So here we are, we've got our config file. We still need to define the services or Tugboat will not be happy. So we do that by saying services : and then we start to provide a list of services. We'll use Nginx here for our Gatsby instance. What we need is the image to use for this Nginx service. Tugboat provides images by default, 10 or 15 or so images. If we go over here to the Tugboat documentation at docs.tugboat.qa and look at these pre-built images, you can see those here and find which ones to use. We also support images from Docker Hub and private image repositories as well. We don't support images that contain volumes, and that's just the way that Tugboat's architected. These preview environments are meant to be quick, efficient, ephemeral, spin up and tear down really quickly. And because of that, we optimize Tugboat for speed and really fast build times. And volumes kind of, they go against that philosophy of quick and efficient build times. If you want to add a Docker container that has volumes in there, we actually provide a set of scripts in our repository, in the images repository of Tugboat QA that you can run against the container to optimize it for Tugboat. So now we've given it the image name. This Nginx : here on line 3, that will become the host name of this particular service. And so if we had another one down here called, MySQL, and we needed to reference that service, like if we wanted to connect to the database, we wouldn't connect it through localhost. The host would be MySQL that we would connect to. So that's where that comes in handy. The other thing that I want to do is add the default flag of true. And we're telling Tugboat, by setting this flag, we're telling Tugboat that, hey, this is the webhead container for our project. Make port 80 available and have our preview URLs that are generated be run against this service as the webhead. That's really all we need to spin up an Nginx instance. So if we commit this, we can go back here and we can click a rebuild. And when we set the default to true, the other thing it does is we tell Tugboat to check out a copy of the Git repository too. So that's what's happening right here, and it's done and ready to go. If we hit preview, we just get the Nginx landing page, and we refresh the screen here, and we can see the Nginx container ready to go. Another helpful tool for making your config files is the terminal access that we have for each of the services. This is great because you can go in here and you can run any of the commands that you think that you're going to put into your config file and see if they actually execute properly. Super helpful for not having to do a build every single time just to add a line. One thing to note though is that when you are in the config.yaml file, if you change directory on line 36, you'll still go back to being in the default directory again on line 37. So just remember that in here, in the shell access, when you change the directory, you stay there. But when you're in the config files, that resets every time each command is run on its own. But you can see here, here's our config file. We could keep messing with it here if we wanted to. We could install Nano and keep editing it here. But I'm just gonna go back into our config file over here in the repo because it's a little bit easier. It saves the version history for me and things like that. So the first thing that we need to do is send some commands over to this Nginx service. There's a number of commands that we can run. There's 3. There's things that happen during the initialization phase, during the update phase, and the build phase. We'll worry about when to use those phases later. For now, we're just going to add things here to the initialization phase. Gatsby needs Node, so let's get that installed. I'm going to do a Google search for how to do that. We are using a container that runs, or an image that runs on Ubuntu. So let me just copy these commands here to get Node installed. Again, you can do this from the command line or from the terminal as well if you're not sure that they will work. That's a great way to kind of test. Now that we've got Node, let's go look at our Gatsby documentation, or their Gatsby documentation. Let's see. Step 1, install the command line tool. Okie dokie. What's the next one? And create a new site. So let's do that. All right, and then after that, we can do Gatsby build to generate the assets, and we need to still link up the Nginx web root to the public folder that Gatsby build generates, but we will do that later. This is a good sort of base setup here. So let's save those changes. All right, now let's go over to Tugboat and try and build this one. So go here, we'll kick off a rebuild. And this is going to take a while because we're going to check out the Git repo, we're going to install Node, we're going to install the Gatsby command line tool, and then we're going to create a new Gatsby site. So what we want to do is we want to do this hard build or this long build first, and then once this is done, and assuming there's no errors, we will take a snapshot of this so that every time we build a new preview, it'll be building from this point rather than having to do it over and over again. In Tugboat language, that's called creating a base preview. All right. If we look over here at the documentation, there's a whole concept here about base previews and how they work. They are updated. Base previews are updated every night. If there's a merge request or pull request, they pull those in. But the previews that are generated from that snapshot aren't automatically updated, although we might be we're thinking about changing that and performing auto updates. Let me see how the build is doing. All right, so we're almost done here. The other thing that I talked about was the update and build commands as well. If you want more information about that, you can go over here to the configuring Tugboat section, and it's down here when we talk about the init, update, and build. I'll let you read the details of when to do that. We even have examples here of why you might want to call them at different times. But one thing to keep in mind is that over here, this is similar to the drop-down menu of when I hit the rebuild, that this refresh command is useful because it only runs commands that are in the update and build section, and it's a quick way to, like, you know, when you're debugging a config file, if you put a command in update or build, then you can just hit refresh to quickly test if the command works. If you put it in init, then you have to run the whole thing over again. So that's just another thing to keep in mind here. All right, so that went well. This GitHub deployment, that just means that I'm not posting anything back to GitHub that this build is ready for preview. I can go into settings and change that, but because this is a demo, I don't have a team to communicate with here. Awesome. So let's take this and make it a base preview. Let's take a snapshot of this. So we'll go here, make a snapshot. Awesome. And now I want to clone this because I want to be able to build another one. The great thing about cloning is it's instant. It's super awesome to be able to make a clone and have it ready to go. So now we're inside this one. I'm going to go back and finish out our Gatsby build here. Now I could just keep adding the commands here to the init routine. That would be fine because it's just a demo. But I'm going to go ahead and just put them in the build hook here. We wanted to, let's go back to our documentation. So we need to change directories into the Gatsby site, and then once we're there, we can call Gatsby build. Okay. So change directory, and we have to figure out which what the root directory for Tugboat is. So just to kind of be thorough and stuff. So let's go look and see if there's any environment variables for that. The file system location where the Git repo is cloned to Tugboat root. Yep, that'll work. So let's do that. Oops, the screen over here. So we want to expand that variable, and that will be there, and then the name of the folder that we just created is Gatsby site. So we change directory, and then we call Gatsby build. We can pass a verbose flag if we want to be able to watch it. And then we need to link up our doc root. So we'll do this, and the Gatsby build will generate a folder called public, and there's another Tugboat shortcut here called docroot for Nginx, so you don't have to worry about the details there. And that's it. So we'll save that. Hopefully I typed everything correctly. Now over here, this is our preview. This is built from a base preview. That's what this is saying here, from this base preview. If we run the rebuild command, remember it will call init and update and build those hooks again. But in this case, since this is a build from a base preview, the init and update hooks will already have run, so it'll be fast. We could also do refresh, which just calls the update and build commands, but it'll also be fast. So it doesn't really matter which one we want to do to kick off the build. So we'll just do a rebuild for the heck of it. But we can watch here. It won't go through the process of installing Node and all of that stuff again from scratch because we're just using a base preview. So it's a way to kind of keep things going fast here. But hopefully this will build out our Tugboat site, and I'll be able to show you a fully working preview of the Gatsby site. If instead of branches we were using pull requests, then what we would do is this would also post back into GitHub, and anytime we made a change to the pull request, a new build would automatically kick off. We wouldn't need to go here and do it manually. And here we are. That was a lot faster because we built from a base preview. Looks like we can see our command here. It's a link to the doc root, so let's try it out. And there's our Gatsby site. So thanks everybody for watching. If you have any questions, be sure to check out the documentation. There's a whole bunch of good stuff in here. And lastly, please join us on Slack, where you can interact with other Tugboat community members. To get there, go to the bottom of our homepage and click on the Slack support channel. Until next time, see you later.